One of the biggest challenges in a digital trust is designing these systems properly. We are already seeing in smart cities is when these systems get deployed, it's really impossible to secure them after the fact.
Welcome to the Smart Cities Council podcast and its special series with our global thought leaders. Smart Cities Council's global thought leadership team is an exclusive group of subject matter experts driving policy and standards, setting industry trends, conducting research, and building and sharing knowledge to advance our mission. My name is Fanni Melles, and I am the global thought leader for youth engagement at the Smart Cities Council. Today, as our first guest in our series, I welcome Junaid Islam to the podcast, who is the global thought leader for digital trust. Junaid Islam has 35 years of experience developing network protocols from MPLS routing for global internet communications in the 90s to interference-aware routing for NASA's upcoming Artemis moon mission. Over the past few years, Junaid has focused on ensuring data is secure as it moves from sensors and imaging systems to AI-based resource management programs in smart cities. Junaid, welcome to the
Well,
podcast. And let's start with an easy question. What does digital trust mean?
great. Well, thanks for having me on the Smart Cities Council podcast series. And as you know, digital trust is critical. And the question is, what is digital trust? Why is it important? If you're familiar with smart cities, we have a lot of technology. I mean, a lot. And we have technology, we have sensors measuring temperature, measuring people, we have cameras everywhere. And the fundamental problem everybody in the world is asking, are smart city, the technologies there to serve us or really there to spy on us? One of the important things for the Smart Cities Council and why digital trust is one of the building blocks, we want really to send a message where smart cities are there for the people. They're not there to collect data on people. They are not there to be used by political parties to go after their opponents. They're there to make your life better, more livable, help reduce energy wastage, help you get there quicker. So that's why digital trust is so critical. We need to have digital trust in the systems in smart cities so that they are doing what we think they are doing.
So the trust comes from people towards the technology that it's there for serve us and not to serve something else behind the technology. Before we move on, what does smart city mean to you?
Well, for me, smart cities is really about cities where the resources, and we have two big resources in all cities around the world. One is energy. Without energy, you can't have a modern city. It's there for, the elevators, it's for the cars, the buses, all forms of energy. And then the second is the transportation system. And they're kind of interlinked. Obviously, the transportation system needs energy, but they have very different dynamics where the transportation systems are kind of moving people around and moving energy around. Now, underneath that, there's other systems like communication systems. But when I think of smart cities, it's really optimizing the resource of energy and transportation assets for the benefit of the citizens who live in the city. And, if you think about that, nowhere in that definition is it necessary for the smart city to spy on people, collect data. In fact, it's an orthogonal thing. Yet around the world, we see surveillance cameras being deployed and rightly making people nervous. So, from our perspective of the Smart City Council, we want to create a better living environment for all of the inhabitants on inside these cities so everybody is better. We don't want to create environments where people are spied on or they feel spied on.
Technology is a broad term, and I understand technology as scientific knowledge applied to solve problems. What does technology mean to you?
For me, technology, and thank you for the question, it's a broad thing, is, anytime we develop or deploy systems, that and I'm talking about the smart city context, are gathering data, processing data, and then as a result, processing resources. So let me give you a really simple example. Let's think of a smart energy system. Today, we have people turning on air conditioners when it's hot and turning them off when it's not that hot. Problem with this is everybody feels hot at the same time. And when they turn on their energy at the same time, they draw so much power that it blows up the transformers, which then causes damage, which makes it even hotter. So, in a smart energy application, what we would want to do is put sensors in people's homes so that we could turn on the air conditioners when needed, but we could also sense if there's nobody in the house, you know. So if there's nobody in the house, the entire energy grid could really be less threatened or overtaxed by not turning on those systems and only turning on the systems where there are people. This is very common sense. And you would say, everybody wins. You save on your electric bill, the city wins because there's not unnecessary air conditioning. But here's the rub: the sensors in people's homes inherently know if you're there or not, which is they're using the presence of the human to decide to make sure the system is on or off. We now have a privacy issue where these sensors can now track people. So if you think you're being spied on by your air conditioner, you're probably not going to get a smart air conditioner, nor are you going to opt into an energy management system or smart transportation system. You're just going to feel uncomfortable. The key to digital trust is to have systems that are secure, so your personal data is not going to application, but B, transparent. That is, if you as a citizen or an air conditioner user want to understand what data is being collected, you should just be able to go to your website or your phone and just see what the system sees. And you don't need a special technology or a court order. So it's very important as we look at these technologies being deployed that digital trust, the capability for digital trust is kind of built in to these technologies and also built into the policies around smart cities.
I will be cheeky and ask the question whether it is in the companies and policymakers' mind, and do they benefit from this kind of transparency? Would they do it because data is, as Jonathan Reichenter usually says, data is the new oil for new
Yeah.
currency, the new oil for the 21st century? Would they be willing
Hey,
to transparently provide this data to anyone?
so unfortunately, if we look at the deployment of smart cities over the last few years, it has not really respected the privacy of the inhabitants. And that's because primarily smart cities have two big groups that lead them. One is certainly the urban planners, but the second is really the vendors selling technology or products and services. Rarely is the voice of the citizen expressed. So, one of the really important things the Smart City Council has done in setting up these thought leadership groups like the one you run for education and what I run for digital trust is really to be an advocate for the citizens and say, help the citizens, empower the citizens, be a voice of the citizens and say, we don't want our data to be collected without our consent. We don't want it to be used without our consent or sold without our consent. We don't want our daily lives to be tracked without consent. So, what we are doing here at the Smart City Council is, I would say, really being the voice of the citizen to make sure that their needs get heard and the policies are adopted. And one of the very critical areas is digital trust. But as you know, we have thought leaderships in a number of areas, such as education, such as jobs. When we build a smart city, will the people who live there be able to get the jobs to run these cities? Well, that requires training. Will the people get the education to run these smart energy and transportation systems? And because all smart cities around the world, no matter where they are paid by local taxpayers, we feel at the Smart City Council that there should be some intrinsic benefit. That these smart cities just shouldn't be construction projects, or shouldn't be a new shopping mall or office tower, and then all the money is gone. We want to make sure smart cities are livable cities, sustainable, that pull in the community, and a part of that is digital trust in the sensor and imaging systems, so the data is used appropriately and processed appropriately. And one of the things we want, in addition to privacy by default, which is a part of digital trust, we also want transparency. That is, any citizen should be able to look at the data being collected on a browser, on a mobile app, without any special tools. And that is one of the things we at the Smart City Council are advocating for on a global basis.
We have been touching upon this, but what do you think? What are the biggest challenges in digital trust?
One of the biggest challenges in a digital trust is designing these systems properly. They get procured and deployed. One of the unfortunate things we are already seeing in smart cities is when these systems get deployed, like traffic management systems, where we just have cameras that connect to the internet, it's really impossible to secure them after the fact because the cameras are you're just broadcasting on the internet. And we see this around the world. And one of the things we've seen is thieves, common thieves, who get on to digital cameras for traffic and actually can see people's homes, and they actually wait for someone to get in their car and leave because they can watch it. And then they go and steal from their house. This has actually happened around the world, right? So we don't want that to happen. We want, say, traffic management cameras, which have a legitimate purpose, to be secure or private by default. And we want to make sure that there's no risk that a thief will use a camera to break into people's homes. So the most difficult thing in smart cities and in digital trust is having that dialogue early, making sure the design for privacy for citizens is built into traffic management and energy management systems right from day one. Because to do it as an afterthought after these systems are deployed, in most cases, is either very difficult or impossible. And we don't want that to happen.
Is this a challenge? I mean, I would assume that from the get-go, the companies would benefit from a secure platform because if the company's name gets into a problematic situation, then they can't really, I mean, they can survive, but there will be always that kind of mistrust regarding the company. Why is this a challenge?
Unfortunately, security is an afterthought, not just in the smart cities industries, but around the world in all industries. Every day we see news of major cyber attacks at credit card companies, banks around the world, you know? And just recently, this is being videotaped in May 2024. A few weeks ago, there was a major breach at the US cyber incident, a cyber agency responsible for cybersecurity. Their emails were stolen. So even in a group that is the world leader in cyber, they didn't take their own cybersecurity seriously. So, I mean, unfortunately, cybersecurity, data protection are not things that we talk about, and we only bring it up after the data's been stolen. So, from a smart city design perspective, and this goes back to the Smart City Council and the role of the thought leaderships, is to make sure that these issues, such as digital trust, education, jobs for local people, a sustainable smart city, so there can be innovation and opportunities for people to develop technologies, is key to have a proper functioning smart city. If a smart city is just about doing a big contract and building a shopping mall and an office tower, which unfortunately smart cities by in large around the world have been really defined by large scale construction projects, which is fine. But a new office tower or a shopping mall is exactly that. It's a new office tower or a shopping mall. It's not really helping the community. More importantly, these mega projects always vacuum a lot of tax money. And we're talking this at a global scale. No matter where you are, what the money, these smart projects are expensive. So part of what we're trying to do at the Smart City Council is bring critical topics which affect the citizen, such as digital trust. Is the data secure? How's it going to be used? Education, jobs, into the dialogue, into the planning cycle, so that these cities truly serve the community, not just serve the vendor. So, this a lofty goal for the Smart City Council, but we are determined to, do the right thing, because as global citizens, we have no choice but to do the right thing. We have to live in these things. We have to make sure that smart cities serve us, that they just don't turn into technology monstrosities.
All right. And then if we think about these lofty goals, what do you think? What are the biggest opportunities for digital trust?
I would say the biggest opportunity for digital trust, which almost sounds like it's going to sound almost opposite to privacy and transparency, is really to create a marketplace for data. I mean, early on, you mentioned that right now smart cities are collecting data without consent. So, the first important part of a smart city, as we just talked a few minutes ago, we want privacy by default. And we want a full transparency to make sure that these systems are doing what is promised. But smart cities are also about innovation, new startups, young people who are just graduating from engineering school that want to create a better air conditioner. So, as a part of the resource marketplace where we have energy and transportation, we want to create a resource marketplace for data. Let me give you a simple example. Say you drive to work and you've got one of these software programs that helps you, drive around. And there's a young group of engineers led by a female CEO who wants to create a better management system for cars. Wouldn't it be great if she could offer all the people to say, look, I have this pilot. Would you opt in and give your data to me and exchange, perhaps in cooperation with the city? You get a discount on your transportation or energy services. This everybody wins, right? And the important thing is you're opting in. So I think the goal of a digital trust is not just to be a cost center, to be a pull on innovation. The goal is, to do this right, protect people's data so they can't be stolen, but also allow people to monetize and share their data on an opt-in basis for the companies that want to create new products and services. And that's critical, because smart cities, if they're only financed through tax money, and this is true anywhere in the world, it becomes too burdensome after a while, because we don't need tax money for other services such as education, healthcare, right? We can't have the smart office tower or shopping mall vacuuming out all the money. So we want to make sure there's sustainable business models around energy, traffic, and then the data. But we can't have a resource marketplace for data unless the data itself is encrypted and locked down and in control of the person generating the data.
It sounds you advocate for win-win situations where the citizens win, the city wins, the companies win, and everybody else who would be involved with the data sharing wins.
Correct. So, from a smart cities perspective, we are really seeking not only to engage all stakeholders, the developers, the urban planners, the political leadership, whether in America, that would be both the mayors and the state governors, but also the citizens themselves. We think it's a mistake to first steal data, which is what's happening. And then there's already groups around the world that are reacting to the theft of data and basically advocating for a complete elimination of all technology. I personally, and I think most all the Smart City Council advocates, think that's a mistake. What we really want is a balanced approach. We recognize, first of all, I think we all recognize we have to do a much better job of energy management. We just do. I mean, we're just wasting a lot of energy being stuck in traffic, air conditioning and heating homes and office buildings that are empty. I mean, this is very common sense. Let's get smart about this and we can have a huge impact, right? So we all agree to that. But one of the key things is we want to make sure it's done with a recognition of the community. We also want to make some recognition of the financial structure, that All these projects always start with tax incentives or basically paid by taxpayers. But we want to recognize that in an urban environment, there are other issues. So as we get the smart infrastructure, we want it to pay for itself and we want to find ways for the community to participate, startups to participate, to create new products and service and pay for this, right? So I would say it's more than just making it a win-win. I would think economic participation of the citizens in a smart city, being able to get education, get jobs, feeling secure, I would say is the only long-term path for a smart city. I mean, if we don't get this all right, if it's just about making it a building, then smart cities will be nothing more than a real estate play at best in the short run. And we have too much at stake from a global energy consumption issue to get this wrong. I mean, we're all living in the same world. We're all watching our energy resources dwindle. And the biggest thing I think we can do as a smart city community is get rid of unnecessary waste on a global scale. Around the world, people are stuck in traffic when really smart transportation systems could easily help them get where they're going. Everybody wins. Similarly, massive amount of energy is being used for air conditioning and heating around the world when structures are empty. So forget about even advanced technologies like better insulation. We just have empty structures, right? These are very quick things where smart energy and transportations provide a huge return on investment. We want that to happen, but we want it to happen in a sustainable way that involves the citizens and that also starts paying for itself.
How did you arrive to digital trust? What has been your journey towards this field? Because you are it's clear that you are very passionate about it and you have been working with data security for a long time. What has been your journey towards digital trust?
So, my interest in digital trust really started a few years ago when I was retained to do a project called Discovery Park at Purdue University in Indiana. And one of the things they wanted to do, and the reason they hired me, is to make sure that the air conditioning systems, they have a smart energy system and smart traffic was secure, from hackers to steal all the data. So we did the work and then we had a meeting with the people who lived there and we thought they would just love it. And the first meeting went badly. They just hated the everything. So it was like an eye opening. They just hated because they felt they were being spied on by their air conditioner. So I kind of realized that we have to get this right. It's just not about technology. And people talk about cybersecurity, and I kind of started on smart cities from a pure cybersecurity perspective. Like, let's make sure the data isn't stolen by a ransomware person. Let's make sure somebody doesn't turn it off remotely to do an extortion play, and that's the lens. But I myself have now realized that's a very narrow lens that we just have to look at the day-to-day life. So digital trust is a broader concept than just cybersecurity. Cybersecurity just making sure someone doesn't steal the data from the server. So let's assume we have the best cybersecurity system, perhaps one that I could design for you. The question quickly becomes, okay, now the data is not stolen and we all believe that because hopefully I worked on it. What's the data being used for and how? And that's where the digital trust issues comes in, which is, all right, we know the data is secure. Is it being sold? Is it being used for political purposes? Is the mayor from one political party really spying on the candidate mayor from the other political party using the traffic management system? Are they using the smart energy system to figure out if there's a big meeting somewhere of civil rights people or people who don't like each other, right? So digital trust is the broader human experience. And that's why I use the term digital trust and not cybersecurity. I actually feel that cybersecurity or data protection can be built into a smart city. So think about the cyber piece as the block, the raw technology. What do we want to do with that? Well, we want privacy, but we also want to make sure the data is not misused. So now we're getting into concepts that are actually broader than just cybersecurity. Who's collecting the data? What are they going to do with it? Can a citizen who's not technical or not wealthy verified. So digital trust, the idea of transparency is super important. And transparency is actually not a cybersecurity concept. Cybersecurity might be, let's just encrypt everybody and not let anybody know what's going on. You're done from a cyber perspective, right? But is that a digital trust solution? And the answer is no. As in, who has that data? How are they going to use it? If nobody's allowed to know what's going on, how can you trust the system? So digital trust has the broader concept where there is a cyber block, but there's also a transparency component. We want the system to be transparent. And then there's a third block element, which is really this notion of a resource marketplace for data so citizens can opt in and sell their data. Why? We want smart cities to be about innovation. Let somebody invent a robotic taxi. Let someone create a better way to build an air conditioner or cool a home, right? There's this notion of microgrids, where a block or a building is managing energy on its own. And these are really powerful concepts, right? So there should be a way for the citizens or the people who live in an apartment building to opt in through a resource marketplace to share their data with their consent with the person making this next generation air conditioning or heating system, right? So that's why we see digital trust as much broader than just cyber because, it really brings into the life cycle. How are people going to live in this on a long-term basis?
This broader concept of digital trust is sounds amazing. What can you suggest in the digital trust field for someone who is just starting out with this concept and is interested in to start with? What should they do? How can they approach digital trust to learn more, to be engaged, to be involved?
So smart cities is very new, as everybody knows, and digital trust is even a newer concept within that. There are more and more papers being published on the internet. I mean, but it's still microscopic versus, the vast amount of material from smart cities, unfortunately, is sales and marketing materials from people selling better air conditioners and heaters and robotic cars. And so the digital source is just coming the opposite direction. So I would encourage people interested in this, and I hope people who watch this video do become interested to take some time to, when there's a cyber attack, instead of just saying, oh, there's a cyber attack, just going to the next thing, taking a few minutes to understand how was the system attacked and what was done and not done. I'd encourage you to do this. I'd encourage people to look for our privacy standards being adopted in the place that you live. Start with your own city. What is being done by your community, as they build out these systems, get involved. One of my goals is to start generating workshops and have forums online so people don't have to travel, where we can start participating with people around the world who care about issues like privacy, data protection, how's it being used, who want their systems to be transparent. So it's easy to figure out what's going on. So we're just at the beginning of digital trust. And it's great that the Smart City Council has decided to take this on. It's going to be a long road, but I think it's an important role. And I think it is foundational to a smart city, just as education is, healthcare, good jobs for people who live in a smart city so they can actually run these systems. These are all critical building blocks, and these are all very difficult, but all foundational and critical. I don't think we have a choice. We have to get this right.
Junaid, you have been very generous with your answers and time. Do you have any closing comments or requests for the audience?
Just that we at the Smart Cities Council have just kicked off this process, and you're going to see more and more from us. Everything we do in terms of public advocacy, we're either going to charge no money or we're going to charge the minimum. And that's to really encourage as many people to join. And I hope you decide to participate with the Smart Cities Council. What makes us different is we are not a vendor group. We are composed of, yes, there are vendors, but there's also people on the public policy side, there's educators, there's technologists, and we're all trying to build a community to, create a more livable smart city for all stakeholders. So with that, I hope people decide to participate at whatever level they can.
Thank you so much, Junaid, for your time. If you want to learn more about Junaid, links will be provided in the show notes. And the Smart Cities website can inform you even more. What have you learned from this interview? What questions do you have after listening to Junaid? What would you like to know more about? Let us know on the Smart Cities Council website or on LinkedIn. Look out for other episodes with the global thought leaders or topical discussions, and thanks for